Hey Dave, how you doing today?
Not bad, Nick. How are you?
Fantastic. Friday, sun
We,
shining.
I know we keep scheduling these recordings for like the most beautiful times of the week, and it makes it hard. We probably speed through trying to get them done in time to get outside and
Right?
enjoy ourselves.
That is true. But we got another good topic today, continuing on in our series on the strategic, reliable blueprint process that we use here at SRB Advisors. And so we are on to the vision stage of our
Yeah,
process.
the third phase here. We've covered the fit meeting where we get to know clients and they get to know us, and the draw blank on the name
Foundations.
foundation meeting. Thank you. We've changed the name a few times over the last few
Yeah,
months. So yes, the
that's right.
foundation meeting where we lay the foundation for planning by getting to know what's important to the client and how they think about their finances. Then we're on to the vision meeting. And this is another part of the process that really falls into your expertise. So, why don't you give us an overview of what goes on in those meetings?
Yeah, sure. So the vision meeting, one of my favorites, if not my favorite. I think I said that last week about foundations too. So clearly, I enjoy the
We
process.
just
But
like the process, right?
yeah, that's right. So the vision meeting is kind of building on that foundation meeting. We lay the foundation just like any building. We want it to be super wide in terms of, we're building up from there. And so the vision meeting, if you think about it, is really taking all those things that are important to you and trying to help you prioritize them and figure out, okay, I've got all these things that are important to me, but how do
Mm-hmm.
I think about it in terms of, what's at my heart's core of I have to have this in my life in order to live a fulfilling life. Versus, what are some of that stuff that, yeah, that'd be great to sail around the world in a small sailboat, but if I never did it, it wouldn't be something that I would feel like I
Right.
missed out on life because of it. And so we patent our process after George Kinder's financial life planning process. And so we utilize his three questions to really get at that heart's core of what's most important to you and what do you need to have in life. And then, so there's three questions and a heart's core grid that our clients fill out before the meeting. And then we just kind of have them walk us through their answers and really talk about and give them some space to think about why that's important and what that exactly looks like and really
Mm-hmm.
drill deep into those questions and figuring out, okay, when we're creating this financial plan and we're putting something at the top of the list, what is that thing at the top of the list? And then kind of working our way down so that when we're making financial decisions, we know that we're accomplishing, what's most important first.
Yeah.
And then we really get into kind of building that vision of what that looks like and really kind of visioning it out for people. And I think this is part of the process that's, it's different in a way because, we're essentially kind of trying to get you to focus on what that looks like and what that feels like. And the big reason behind it is really about when we take people through the process, we go through this vision, we do what's called light the torch and give them that vision. And they experience it and think about it in terms of how it would really happen and feel to them. We have much better outcomes at the next meeting, which is our obstacles meeting, and further on in the process, the strategies meeting, when it comes down to, okay, here's all the
Yep.
things that you said were important to you, and you're passionate about these things and you want to make sure you get these things or more of these things in your life or keep these things in your life. So here's the changes that you need to make in order to make that happen. And so this meeting really speaks to the follow through of, hey, if I've got something that I know is super important to me, more important than anything else, I'm going to do whatever changes that Nick and Dave say make sense to do in order to be
Right.
able to achieve that on that level.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Because
as you know, Dave, you and I have struggled a lot with, we create a plan and we give all these advice and steps, and then we meet with a client a year later and we're right back where we started because nothing's gotten done.
right. Yeah. You've got to create that buy-in, in the plan. And by building the plan around what is really truly important to somebody and really getting at that, you're going to create that buy-in, that need to get those things done. These aren't just good suggestions like you should, not eat as many calories so that you lose a little weight over time. This is, hey, this is what's real. It's almost like the bad. It's maybe not a good example, but like when you go to the doctor and you have a health scare, you're really motivated to get home and change your life, right, and change
Right.
your eating habits, or do something different. And we don't have to scare people. Instead, we go the opposite route and try to find what's really important and motivational.
Yeah, and it really is about kind of connecting to that emotion, and we kind of think of it as emotion being energy and motion, and how to get
Mm-hmm.
people motivated. And we've done a podcast on Change for Good, which has a lot of these pieces in there
Yes.
as well. But really, if you have emotion behind what you're trying to do or what you're trying to change, it makes that process that much easier because you've got that motivation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's really
So
what the vision process is all about, is figuring out what that is, and helping to provide the emotion and the energy behind the things that we're going to recommend to do in order to get to that place.
yeah, because anybody who's been an advisor has given somebody a recommendation that is the right thing for them to do, but you can tell they're just not excited about it. And 6 months later, they're not going to have done whatever you talked about, whether it's increasing contributions or savings, or changing how they're frameworking their money. It just won't happen if they don't believe in it. So so do we dare go into the Kinder questions here?
Yeah, we can, sure.
Yeah.
So there's really three questions that we utilize, and kind of the first one is, if you had all the money in the world, or money wasn't a limiting factor, how would you live your life differently if you would? What would you do
Mm-hmm.
differently? And, what would change? And really kind of letting yourself go and thinking about, okay, if money wasn't holding me back, are there things that I would change right away? Are there things that I would keep doing? I think the common theme around that is usually work, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that love their work say, I'd probably keep working. And people that absolutely
Mm-hmm.
hate their work say, I would quit working immediately.
Right.
Um, and so it's just kind of this fun process to think about what we would change, and what's kind of getting in our way right now of doing the things that we want to do. And then the next two questions get progressively more where we kind of narrow it down. The second
Yeah.
one being, if you had 5 to 10 years left to live, so you go to the doctor, he tells you have 5 to 10 years left to live. Not sure when that's going to be in that time frame. You're not going to feel any pain. You're not going to be sick. So what are you going to do with your remaining time? How would things change?
Yeah.
What would you do? What would you want to focus on?
And
And then the
that
last one, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
it really helps dial in those first answers to all of a sudden time is a limiting factor. What do you cross off the list to make sure you get everything that you need to get done?
For sure. Absolutely. And then the last question, basically, you go back to the doctor and he says, you have one day left to live. And so not necessarily, okay, what are you going to do in the last 24 hours of your life, but more about, think back to what you missed out on. What did you not get to be? What did you not get to do? Do you have regrets? Really think about the emotional impact of that moment when it's all over and you're looking back and saying, what are you saying? What are you thinking? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, what you missed out on or what you wished you could be able to do that, and you never got the opportunity to, which really kind of distills it down even further to think about, okay, these are the three or four things that, I really missed out on, or I'm not going to be around for. And
Right.
then the Heart's Core grid is the last one, which is essentially figuring out, okay, what's a Heart's Core in terms of, I have to have this in my life. What do I want to have? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And then there's also a column for ought to, which is kind of the, societal pressure says, hey, I really should be mowing my lawn every 3 days, or that's my personal one. But um, so
I'm with you.
And then there's the fun too, which is kind of a cool, let yourself go, that trip around the world you would love to do, but if it never happens, it never happens. You're not losing sleep over it. And kind of what we find through these questions is that usually people have one of 5 pursuits. When the first one that comes up quite often is family or relationships. The second one is values or spiritual based. The third one is creativity. The fourth is community. And the 5 is environment or place. And those are really what kind of a lot of it boils down to of, hey, what's most important to me on my, when I fill this out, which I've done several times, is usually family and the relationships that I have and spending time with them and being able to be there for them. So that's kind of my personal pursuit, would be those family and relationships. But everybody usually kind of falls into one of these buckets, and the goal of this and how this process has really helped me is to really focus on, what that is, how that's important to me, and how I can change the way that I live my life today, but also how do I change the way that I plan financially for those things as well. And I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for going through these questions, several times now, in terms of the career that I have, the way that I structure the things that I do, the way that I invest my time and my talents and my treasure is all kind of related to these 3 questions, and really focusing on those things that are most important to me.
Well, you raised an interesting little point there. When, like, in the first question, a lot of the answers are about doing things, right? But by the time you get to that third question of what would you miss out on if you only had 24 hours left, and all of a sudden it becomes about family and relationships real fast.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just things that are important to you. And very rarely is it like it's like we've said before on this podcast, 99% of the decisions that you make are financially related, but rarely is it like hey, I never got to have $1 million in my bank account.
Right. Yeah. That's not a goal. It's what you're going to do with the $1 million. I tell people all the time, your money's only as good as what you do with it. So don't worry about your balance. Worry about how you're going to utilize it. And for sure, it's interesting. It's just 3 little questions, and taken individually, they're not anything that special. But when they're done in a systematic way like that, George Kinder's kind of like the Zen master of in-depth life planning and connecting with financial planning. And he started out as a financial planner, investment focused, and moved in that direction, and has really led the industry that way. So it's been good to see that incorporated into what we do.
Yeah, and I think kind of twofold as far as our process and why. We'll let your dog get into the podcast first before we always want the spotlight, those dogs, huh?
Yeah, they manage somehow every week.
All right, let's type down that.
Sorry.
So it's always interesting. It's always interesting to me working with people in this step, is that and for me personally too, is we rarely stop and get off the hamster wheel to think about these things, even though they're so important. And so, a lot of just having that time and space to think about these things, and a little bit of what we talked about last time, having time and space to talk with them about your partner, super important, impactful. And the goal of the vision meeting is really to kind of have you lit on fire in terms of, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what the changes I need to make. And I'm super excited and motivated to do that and to get to that next step, because this is what's truly important to me. And if we can accomplish that in the vision meeting, that's fantastic. And even sometimes a lot of people are like, I love my life. I love the things that I'm doing right now and don't want to stop doing them. And that's awesome too, to be able to figure that out, and to be able to figure out that, you're doing all the things that you wanted to do. And that's never a bad thing. I look at that as a great thing, of just that recognition of, hey, we're doing it right. So it's
Yeah.
not always like
Yeah.
this huge drastic change of, hey, I'm going to quit my job and go live in a monastery. Sometimes it's small changes, sometimes it's big changes, but it's the changes
Yeah.
that matter most to you, the client. And that's what we're trying to provide there.
Yep. And I can hear all of our listeners thinking in the back of their minds, yeah, sure, that's all great, but there's always going to be something in the way. And so rest assured, that's the topic of the next meeting. And we call it the obstacles meeting, but that's when we start looking at how your goals and vision align with your finances and what can we do. We can't necessarily make it perfect, but we can get you headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. And part of the homework coming out of the vision meeting is just to really, let yourself live in that moment of what this all looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and don't think about the things that are going to get in your way, and just really kind of truly feel those feelings. And then we will come to the obstacles meeting and we'll address each of those and we'll make a plan for how we're going to move forward. But oftentimes, we think of these great things that we want to do, and then as humans, we kind of beat ourselves up about it until we forget it. Right. And
Right.
so the goal is to kind of live into that and to let that emotion keep building up to keep you moving in the right direction. Because there's always going to be obstacles to everything, but we'll address them and move forward and kind of go from there. So that's the obstacles meeting that we'll talk about next time.
Awesome. Well, this has been good. I think we both have a lot of pride in the work we put into developing this process. So it's exciting to talk about it and share it and get things rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the best compliments that received from clients is, when we came into this, we weren't sure what we were getting, but I can't tell you how impactful this process was, to what you've been able to do and what we've been able to accomplish. And so, that's part of the reason why we're so proud of it, is because we know that it works and we know that it has an impact on people, and we are in this business to help people, and we found that this is the best way for us to do that.
Yes, sir. Well, I think we can call it a wrap, and we'll pick up with the obstacles meeting next week.
I like it. Sounds good.
All right. Take care,
Thanks,
Nick.
Dave.